Captain Jack Mulligan slouched in his command chair aboard the Earth vessel's subtle approach, sipping what passed for coffee in deep space and contemplating the vast nothingness outside his viewport. The ship's bridge, if you could call the cramped, utilitarian space a bridge, hummed with the quiet efficiency of a well-oiled machine disguised as a piece of junk. Captain called Lieutenant Patel from her communications station. We're receiving a hail from an approaching vessel. Signature matches Vexari Imperium design. Mulligan straightened slightly, but not enough to suggest he cared. On screen, Lieutenant. Let's see what the high and mighty lizards want. The main display flickered to life, revealing a Vexari officer whose scales gleamed under dramatic lighting. Everything about the alien's bridge screamed we spent more on aesthetics than functionality. The Vexari's neck frill expanded slightly, their equivalent of puffing out one's chest. "Attention Earth vessel," the Vexari announced with the pompous tone of someone who practiced speaking to inferiors. "I am Commander Krolak of the Vexari sovereign warship Inevitable Conquest. You have entered space claimed by the glorious Vexari Imperium." Mulligan took another sip of coffee. "Captain Jack Mulligan of the Earth cargo hauler subtle approach. We're on a scheduled trade route approved by the Galactic Commerce Authority. Your claimed space wasn't claimed last week." Krolak's frill fluttered in what humans had learned was amusement. "Ah, yes, the famous human cargo haulers. Tell me, Captain, does your species ever build actual warships? Or do you simply hope your enemies will die laughing at these containers you strap engines to?" Behind Mulligan, his XO commander Diana Reeves suppressed a smile. This was hardly the first time they'd heard this particular insult. "We're a practical species," Commander Mulligan replied with practiced humility. "We build what we need. Not everyone requires golden toilets and ceremonial scale-polished dispensers on their ships." The Vexari's eyes narrowed. "Your insolence is noted, human. But the Imperium is feeling generous today. You may continue your trading, provided you register your passage with our new outpost in the Epsilon sector." "The new outpost?" Mulligan raised an eyebrow. "The Epsilon sector is neutral territory under the Galactic Accord of 2187. The Accord is being renegotiated," Krolak said with a dismissive wave of his clawed hand. "The Vexari Imperium is simply helping establish order in an unstable region." Mulligan exchanged a quick glance with Commander Reeves. This confirmed the intelligence reports they'd received last month. "Well, far be it from us humble cargo haulers to question galactic politics," Mulligan said, laying the subservience on thick. "We'll just go about our business then, if that's all right with you, Commander." Krolak's frill expanded fully now, vibrating with undisguised contempt. "Yes, yes, scurry along with your trade goods, human. The adults have important matters to attend to." The transmission cut, and Mulligan's facade of deference immediately dropped. "Well, that was enlightening," Commander Reeves remarked dryly. "Indeed, it was," Mulligan replied, finishing his coffee. "Lieutenant Patel, send a coded burst to Fleet Command. The Vexari are definitely making their move on the Epsilon sector." "Already composing it," Sir Patel responded. "Navigation. Plot a course that keeps us visible to the Vexari for another hour, then execute a routine course correction that just happens to take us behind that moon. We need them to think we're predictably boring." "Yes, Captain." Plotting the most tediously commercial-looking course possible. Mulligan stood and stretched. "Commander Reeves, assemble the senior staff for a briefing in 30 minutes. Looks like our cargo run just got interesting." As the crew carried out their orders with practiced efficiency that belied their seemingly haphazard surroundings, Mulligan gazed at the Vexari warship through the viewport. Its hull gleamed with polished metal and ornate designs, weapon ports prominently displayed like peacock feathers. "Always with the showing off," he muttered to himself. Meanwhile, aboard the Inevitable Conquest, Commander Krolak turned to his second-in-command. "These humans," he said, mandibles clicking with disdain, "they've been admitted to the Galactic Council solely out of pity. Did you see their ship? It looks like they welded scrap metal to a storage container." Sub-Commander Vexari nodded in agreement. "Their military capabilities are negligible according to intelligence reports. Their vessels are slow, poorly armed, and their shielding technology is at least 3 generations behind ours. Yet they colonize aggressively," Krolak noted. "For a species with such primitive ships, they've expanded remarkably." "They are primarily traders and diplomats," Vexari explained. They secure their position through economic means rather than military strength. A clever approach for a weak species. Krolak flicked his tongue thoughtfully. The Supreme Overlord will be pleased to know we can proceed with the occupation of the Epsilon sector without significant resistance. The humans will protest diplomatically, of course, but what can they really do? Ram us with their cargo ships. The Vexari bridge erupted in hissing laughter. Prepare a full report for the fleet, Krolak ordered. Operation Rightful Claim will proceed as scheduled. The Epsilon sector will be ours within the week, and those pathetic humans can do nothing but watch. Little did the Vexari know that aboard the unimpressive cargo vessel disappearing behind a nearby moon, Captain Mulligan was sending a message that would set in motion events the Imperium could never have anticipated. The conference room of the subtle approach wasn't exactly spacious, more like a storage closet with delusions of grandeur. Captain Mulligan stood at one end, while his senior staff crammed around a table that wobbled if you looked at it wrong. "All right, people, the Vexari have taken the bait," Mulligan announced. "They've bought our helpless trader act hook, line and sinker." Lieutenant Zara Okoye, the ship's tactical officer, activated a holographic display showing the Vexari fleet movements. Despite her youthful appearance, Okoye had graduated top of her class at the Earth Defense Academy, specializing in psychological warfare. "The Vexari Imperium has been moving ships into position around the Epsilon sector for the past 3 weeks, she explained, her voice precise and confident. "Based on their current deployment pattern, they're planning a full-scale invasion, not just establishing an outpost as they claimed." Commander Reeves frowned. "They're violating 6 different treaties." "Since when do the Vexari care about treaties?" Engineer Theo Martinez chimed in from where he was half sitting on a storage container. "Those pompous lizards think they're entitled to whatever they want." "Which is exactly why Admiral Rodriguez implemented Operation Trojan Horse 5 years ago," Mulligan said, nodding to Okoye to continue the briefing. Okoye tapped her datapad, and the hologram shifted to display the history of human spaceflight. "For those who slept through Tactical History 101. She began with a wry smile. "Earth's approach to space militarization has always been unconventional. When humanity first reached the stars and encountered other species, we quickly realized we were technologically outmatched in conventional warfare." The hologram showed early human ships alongside the sleek vessels of established galactic powers, while other species built dedicated warships with obvious weapons systems. Earth's Strategic Command made a pivotal decision, Okoye continued. "Instead of competing in an arms race we couldn't win, we would hide in plain sight." Mulligan picked up the thread. "The galaxy expects warships to look like warships, all sharp angles, visible weapon ports, and aggressive design elements. So we gave them the opposite. Every ship in Earth's military fleet was designed to look like a commercial vessel. And not just look like," Martinez added with evident pride. "They function as commercial vessels. We actually do haul cargo. Perfect cover." The hologram shifted again to show a cutaway of their own ship. What appeared to be storage compartments from the outside were actually housing advanced weapon systems, shield generators, and military-grade propulsion technology. "This doctrine was fully implemented under Admiral Elena Rodriguez's command," Okoye said. "She called it the sheep's clothing initiative." The Admiral realized that appearing weak was our greatest strength. "I served under Rodriguez when she was still a captain," Reeves reminisced. "She used to say, 'If your enemy thinks you're a sheep, they'll never see the wolf until its teeth are at their throat.'" Mulligan nodded appreciatively. "Admiral Rodriguez is now coordinating our response to the Vexari incursion from Fleet Command. We've received our orders." He tapped his own console, and the hologram displayed a tactical overlay of the entire Epsilon sector. "The subtle approach isn't the only cargo ship in this sector," Mulligan explained. "We have the heavy lifter, bulk transport, and merchant's promise all positioned strategically. The Vexari see a handful of slow, unarmed human trading vessels. What they don't see is Earth's third rapid response battle group." Lieutenant Patel raised her hand. "Sir, the Vexari transmission mentioned other species watching. How do we maintain the element of surprise with so many eyes on us?" "Good question," Mulligan replied. "For decades. We've cultivated our reputation as peaceful traders. We've allowed boarding inspections with carefully designed civilian areas. We've even staged mock pirate attacks where our ships appear to barely escape. The entire galaxy thinks humans are technologically inept but likable merchants." Martinez chuckled. We even leaked modified schematics of our ships to the black market. Anyone who's ever tried to get intelligence on human vessels believes we're flying glorified tin cans. What about the Galactic Council? Asked Ensign Foster, the youngest officer present. Won't they object to our deception? Mulligan's expression hardened slightly. The Council has been turning a blind eye to Vexari aggression for years. They're too afraid of starting a galactic war. But what they don't realize is that appeasing bullies like the Vexari only emboldens them. Our orders, he continued, bringing the focus back to the mission, are to allow the Vexari to commit to their invasion of the Epsilon sector. Once they've fully deployed and revealed their intentions to the watching galaxy, we spring the trap. Okoye zoomed in on a small planet at the edge of the sector. The Vexari will likely target the human outpost on Epsilon IV first. It's small, appears lightly defended, and taking it would give them a strategic foothold. We'll position ourselves to appear as though we're attempting a desperate evacuation of civilians. Meanwhile, Reeves added, the other ships in our battle group will be scattered around, seemingly engaged in normal trade activities. The Vexari won't see us as a coordinated military force. Mulligan straightened, his casual demeanor replaced with the bearing of a military commander. Make no mistake, people. This will be the first true test of the sheep's clothing doctrine in actual combat. The Vexari have 5 times our number in ships, but they don't know what we're truly capable of. What about the colonists on Epsilon IV? Ensign Foster asked, concern evident in his voice. There aren't any, Reeves replied with a small smile. The outpost is automated with a few military personnel posing as researchers and miners. The Vexari intelligence is good, but not that good. Martinez rubbed his hands together with barely contained excitement. Finally, after all these years of playing weak, I get to power up my babies to full capacity. The look on those Vexari faces when our weapon ports open. I'd pay good credits to see that. You'll get your chance soon enough, Mulligan assured him. Lieutenant Okoye, coordinate with the other ships in the battle group. Make sure everyone knows their role in the operation. Already on it, Captain Okoye confirmed. Commander Reeves, prepare the ship for combat operations while maintaining our civilian appearance. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Lieutenant Patel, keep monitoring Vexari communications. I want to know the moment they commit to their attack. Understood, Captain. And Martinez. Mulligan turned to his eager engineer. Make sure those babies of yours are ready to give the Vexari the surprise of their scaly lives. Martinez gave a mock salute. They'll never know what hit them, sir. As the meeting dispersed and the crew went about their preparations with quiet efficiency, Mulligan remained in the conference room, studying the holographic display of the sector. Years of maintaining the facade of weakness were about to pay off. The wolves in sheep's clothing were ready to reveal their teeth, and the Vexari Imperium was about to learn a painful lesson about judging books by their covers. Or in this case, judging warships by their cargo bays. Commander Krolak stood on the bridge of the inevitable conquest, his frill fully extended in a display of dominance as he addressed his assembled fleet captains via holographic projection. The Supreme Overlord has approved Operation Rightful Claim, he announced with obvious self-satisfaction. The Epsilon sector will soon be another jewel in the crown of the Vexari Imperium. Our intelligence reports confirm minimal resistance. The sector contains primarily trade outposts, a few mining operations, and one small human colony that barely qualifies as an outpost. The holographic captains nodded in synchronized approval. None dared question the wisdom of the operation, especially when the Supreme Overlord had personally endorsed it. We have observed 4 human vessels in the sector, Krolak continued, bringing up tactical displays showing the positions of the Earth ships. The Subtle Approach, Heavy Lifter, Bulk Transport, and Merchant's Promise. All cargo vessels with minimal defensive capabilities. Sub-Commander Vexnay stepped forward. Our scans confirm they are standard human trade ships. Their shield generators are outdated GX-5 models, and weapons, if present at all, are limited to point defense systems that could barely repel a meteor, let alone a military-grade weapon. What about the Galactic Council? One captain dared to ask. Will they not intervene? Krolak made a dismissive gesture. The Council has been notified that we are conducting anti-piracy operations in response to incidents we've conveniently manufactured. By the time they realize our true intentions, we will already control the sector. They will accept the new reality rather than risk open conflict with the Imperium. And the humans, another captain inquired. The humans, Krolak practically spat the word, will file diplomatic protests and economic sanctions. Their ambassadors will make impassioned speeches about justice and territorial rights. He paused for dramatic effect. And they will accomplish nothing. As always, the assembled captains hissed in amusement. We begin with the human outpost on Epsilon IV, Krolak continued. Taking it will establish our presence in the sector and provide a strategic base for further operations. The humans value their people highly. Once we control their outpost, their response options become even more limited. The fleet will move into position in 6 hours, Vexari added. We anticipate the operation to secure Epsilon IV will require less than 1 standard day cycle. A glorious and simple conquest, Krolak declared. For the Imperium. For the Imperium, the captains echoed before their holograms winked out. When they were alone again, Vexari turned to her commander. Sir, should we not at least consider the possibility that the humans might have some response prepared? They may be technologically inferior, but they have survived in this galaxy for reasons beyond pure luck. Krolak's frill flattened in annoyance. What possible threat could they pose? Vexari, you've seen their ships. We've all seen them. Ungainly, slow, practically unarmed. They're merchants, not warriors. Yes, Commander, Vexari conceded. I merely suggest that. Your caution is noted, Krolak interrupted, but unnecessary. This will be the simplest military operation of my career. Now, prepare the fleet for deployment. Meanwhile, aboard the subtle approach, engineer Theo Martinez was deep in the ship's main engineering bay, which looked nothing like the rest of the vessel. While the areas visible to potential visitors resembled a typical cargo ship's utilitarian and somewhat chaotic engineering section, behind several hidden bulkheads lay the true heart of the warship. Martinez moved between gleaming consoles, checking systems that had been in standby mode for years. His fingers danced over the controls with the precision of a concert pianist. How's it looking, Theo? Captain Mulligan asked as he entered through a concealed door. Martinez looked up with a grin that threatened to split his face. Like Christmas morning, Cap. All systems are green across the board. The masking field generators are functioning perfectly. Anyone scanning us will still see a boring old cargo hauler with outdated tech. He gestured to a particularly complex array of equipment. The adaptive shield modulators are ready to deploy. The moment we drop the masking field, they'll snap into place at full military strength. And these beauties, he patted a console with obvious affection, are my pride and joy. The Hammerfall missile system, Mulligan asked. Upgraded since you last checked, sir. I've improved the targeting algorithms and boosted the yield by 12%. When these launch, the Vexari won't know what hit them. Mulligan nodded approvingly. The other ships in the battle group report similar readiness. The heavy lifter has positioned itself near the Epsilon IV outpost, ostensibly to evacuate personnel. The Vexari will almost certainly intercept them there. Martinez's expression turned serious for a moment. You know, sir, I've been maintaining these systems for 7 years, running simulations, making improvements. But this will be the first time we've actually used them in combat. Having second thoughts, Mulligan asked. Hell no, Martinez's grin returned. I'm just saying. The Vexari are in for one hell of a surprise. All those years of them mocking our ships, treating us like we're some kind of interstellar joke. I've been waiting for this day since I enlisted. Mulligan clasped the engineer's shoulder. The sheep's clothing doctrine was always going to be tested eventually. Admiral Rodriguez chose her moment carefully. The Vexari have been pushing boundaries for too long, and now they've committed an act of aggression that the entire galaxy will witness. Perfect justification for revealing our true capabilities, Martinez nodded. Mulligan's communicator chimed, and Lieutenant Patel's voice came through. Captain, the Vexari fleet is on the move. 17 warships have broken orbit and are heading toward Epsilon IV. Their trajectory will bring them in contact with the heavy lifter in approximately 2 hours. Acknowledged, Mulligan replied. Alert the battle group. Maintain civilian communications protocols but prepare combat encryption channels. Yes, Sir, Patel responded before signing off. Martinez raised an eyebrow. 17 ships? That's overkill for a small outpost. The Vexari have always been fond of overwhelming force, Mulligan said. It suits our purposes perfectly. The more ships they commit, the more devastating their lesson will be. I almost feel sorry for them, Martinez chuckled. Almost. Aboard the heavy lifter, positioned in orbit around Epsilon IV, Commander Olivia Chen watched as her sensor officer reported the approaching Vexari fleet. 17 warships, the officer confirmed. Headed straight for us. Right on schedule, Chen remarked. Begin evacuation protocols. I want shuttles visibly moving between our ship and the surface. Make it look frantic, disorganized. Yes, Commander. Communications, send a distress call. Make sure it's on an open frequency where the Vexari can intercept it. The communications officer nodded and began recording. This is Earth vessel heavy lifter requesting immediate assistance. Vexari warships approaching Epsilon IV. We are attempting emergency evacuation of the research outpost. Any Earth vessels in range, please respond. Chen nodded approvingly. Excellent. Now send a private message to the other Earth ships that the Vexari will definitely intercept and decode. Subtle approach, bulk transport, merchant's promise. This is heavy lifter. Vexari fleet approaching our position. We cannot possibly evacuate all personnel in time. Requesting any assistance you can provide. Be advised, Vexari forces vastly outnumber and outgun us. Approach with extreme caution. Perfect, Chen said with a satisfied nod. Now we wait for the fish to take the bait. As the Vexari fleet approached Epsilon IV, Commander Krolak received the intercepted messages with growing satisfaction. Look at them scramble, he said, watching the sensor readings of shuttles moving between the heavy lifter and the planet's surface. Like insects when you disturb their nest. The other human vessels are changing course, Vexnay reported. They appear to be responding to the distress call, but their approach vectors are uncoordinated. Of course they are, Krolak scoffed. Merchants playing at being heroes. Contact the bulk transport, order them to stand down and leave the sector. Let's see how these humans respond to direct threats. Minutes later, the response came in. The human captain of the bulk transport had stammered nervous assurances that they were just there to help their people and meant no harm to the mighty Vexari fleet. Krolak's frill vibrated with amusement. These humans truly are pathetic. They don't even maintain the illusion of dignity in the face of superior force. All ships are now in optimal attack formation, Vexnay reported. The human vessels are scattered throughout the sector, just as anticipated. Excellent, Krolak hissed. Begin the operation. Target the heavy lifter first. One warning shot across their bow should be sufficient to make them surrender. As the order was relayed, Krolak settled back in his command chair, savoring the moment. The Epsilon sector would fall easily, a testament to Vexari superiority and human weakness. The Supreme Overlord would be pleased, and Krolak's path to greater command would be secured. Little did he know that the trap had been perfectly set, and he and his fleet had sailed right into it. The Vexari warship Dominant Force fired a warning shot that blazed past the heavy lifter, deliberately missing by mere kilometers. The energy beam's passage caused the human vessel's outdated shields to flicker visibly. Human vessel Commander Krolak's voice boomed across the communication channels. You are ordered to surrender the Epsilon IV outpost to the Vexari Imperium. Comply immediately or face destruction. On the bridge of the heavy lifter, Commander Chen put on her best expression of panicked desperation. Vexari Commander, please. We are conducting a civilian evacuation. There are scientists and researchers on the surface. We mean no harm. You have 10 minutes to surrender the outpost, Krolak replied coldly. Any resistance will be met with overwhelming force. The communication cut off, and Chen's facade instantly dissolved into a calculated smile. She tapped her secure comlink. All ships, this is heavy lifter. The Vexari have committed. They fired a warning shot and demanded surrender. The timer is running. Across the sector, the captains of the seemingly scattered human vessels acknowledged the message with terse confirmations. On the subtle approach, Captain Mulligan turned to his bridge crew. You heard the commander. 10 minutes until the Vexari expect a surrender. That gives us 8 minutes to get into optimal position. Lieutenant Okoye, coordinate with the battle group. I want all ships in attack formation, but maintain civilian appearance until my mark. Aye. Captain Okoye responded, her fingers flying over her tactical console. Lieutenant Patel, open a secure channel to Admiral Rodriguez at Fleet Command. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the stern face of Admiral Elena Rodriguez. Despite being hundreds of light years away at Earth Fleet headquarters, her presence immediately commanded attention. "Captain Mulligan," she acknowledged. "Status report. The Vexari have taken the bait, Admiral. 17 warships committed to the operation, all converging on Epsilon IV. They've fired a warning shot at the heavy lifter and demanded surrender within 10 minutes. Admiral Rodriguez nodded, satisfaction evident in her eyes. The diplomatic observers from the Galactic Council have been alerted to the Vexari aggression. They're monitoring the situation. This is the moment we've been preparing for, Captain. For too long, the galaxy has seen humanity as weak traders without military capability. Today, that perception changes." "Yes, Admiral." "You have authorization to execute Protocol Revelator. Show them what Earth's cargo ships can really do." There was the faintest hint of a smile on the Admiral's otherwise stern face. "With pleasure," Admiral Mulligan replied. "We'll transmit battle footage as it unfolds." As the communication ended, Mulligan turned to his XO. "Commander Reeves, battle stations." Throughout the ship, subtle changes began to occur. Crew members moved with practiced efficiency to their combat positions. Hidden panels slid open to reveal advanced targeting systems and weapon controls. The lighting dimmed slightly and took on a reddish hue as the ship transitioned from its civilian mode to full military readiness. In engineering, Theo Martinez was practically dancing between control panels. Finally, after all these years, he punched a series of commands into his console, asking field generators standing by to disengage, weapons systems powering up behind the field, shields ready to reconfigure to full military specification. All systems green, Captain. 5 minutes. Until the Vexari deadline, Patel reported. Mulligan nodded. "Send to all Earth ships execute Revelator on my mark at T-2 minutes. Synchronize countdown." Aboard the inevitable Conquest, Commander Krolak watched with growing satisfaction as the human ships scrambled in apparent panic. The heavy lifter was still desperately trying to evacuate personnel from the surface, while the other human vessels moved into positions that any military commander would recognize as completely ineffective. "They truly have no concept of proper fleet tactics," he commented to Vexnay. "Look at them, scattered without any coherent formation." Vexnay, however, was studying her sensor readings with a slight frown. "Commander, I'm detecting unusual power fluctuations from the human vessels. Probably their outdated reactors struggling to maintain their feeble shields," Krolak dismissed. "How much time remains on the ultimatum?" 2 minutes, Commander." "Excellent. Prepare boarding parties. I want that outpost secured with minimal damage." Vexnay's frown deepened. "Sir, the fluctuations are increasing. And there's something strange about their power signatures. They don't match our intelligence profiles for human cargo vessels." For the first time, a flicker of concern crossed Krolak's features. "Explain." "I can't, sir. It's as if—" She never finished her sentence as Captain Mulligan's voice suddenly boomed across all communication channels. "Attention, Vexari Fleet. This is Captain Jack Mulligan of the Earth Defense Force stealth battlecruiser Subtle Approach. You have committed an act of aggression against Earth territory in violation of the Galactic Accord. The diplomatic observers from the Galactic Council have been notified and are monitoring this situation." Krolak's frill flattened against his neck in confusion. "Stealth battlecruiser. What nonsense is this?" But even as he spoke, the sensors on his bridge began blaring urgent warnings. "Be advised." Mulligan continued, his voice now carrying an unmistakable tone of authority rather than the deference he'd shown earlier. "Earth defensive forces are present in this sector in sufficient numbers to repel your incursion. You have 60 seconds to power down your weapons and withdraw from Epsilon IV. This is your only warning." Krolak hissed in fury. "What game are they playing? Show me visual of the human vessels." The main screen shifted to show the Subtle Approach, still looking exactly like the unimpressive cargo hauler it had always appeared to be. "They're bluffing," Krolak declared. "Open a channel." "Captain Mulligan," he sneered once communications were established, "your pathetic attempt at intimidation is noted. Perhaps in the future, if you wish to be taken seriously, the Earth Defense Force should invest in actual warships rather than repurposed cargo haulers." Mulligan's response was calm, and accompanied by what the Vexari would later describe as the most terrifying smile they had ever seen on a human face. "Commander Krolak, I apologize for the deception. Allow me to properly introduce you to the Earth Defense Force 3rd Rapid Response Battle Group." Mulligan nodded to someone off-screen. "Mark." Across the sector, 4 seemingly unremarkable human cargo vessels underwent a transformation that would forever change the galaxy's perception of humanity. The subtle approach shimmered as its masking field disengaged, revealing a hull that was suddenly bristling with weapon ports as hidden panels slid open along its length. What had appeared to be cargo containers reconfigured, sections rotating and extending to reveal missile launchers, energy cannons, and point defense systems. The ship's previously dull hull now gleamed with the metallic sheen of advanced armor plating that had been concealed beneath a holographic camouflage. Similar transformations occurred simultaneously with the heavy lifter, bulk transport, and merchant's promise. Each vessel shed its humble appearance like a butterfly emerging from a chrysalis, revealing state-of-the-art warships that had been hiding in plain sight for years. On the bridge of the inevitable conquest, jaws quite literally dropped. "Impossible," Krolak whispered. Sir Vexnar's voice was urgent. "Their power signatures have quadrupled, shield strength increasing exponentially, weapons systems coming online, massive weapons systems. How could we not have detected?" Krolak's question was cut short as the subtle approach fired a precision shot that lanced across the void to strike the inevitable conquest's forward sensor array. The beam neatly disabled the equipment without causing catastrophic damage to the vessel. That Mulligan's voice came through again was a demonstration shot. "Your sensors are now partially disabled, but your ship remains fully operational. I suggest you use your remaining systems to observe what happens next." Without waiting for a response, the 4 revealed Earth battlecruisers moved with shocking speed and coordination into an attack formation that no mere merchant captains could have executed. The heavy lifter, now visibly a heavy assault carrier, launched squadrons of fighter craft that had been hidden within what appeared to be standard cargo containers. The bulk transport unleashed a barrage of electronic warfare measures that immediately began disrupting Vexari targeting and communication systems. Ships that had been clustered too close together suddenly found themselves unable to coordinate their actions. And the merchant's promise demonstrated why its name had been particularly ironic by deploying a series of dimensional anchors, advanced devices that prevented Vexari ships from entering faster than light speed to escape. It was a perfectly choreographed opening attack that left the Vexari fleet in disarray before they had even fired a single shot in return. By the Supreme Overlord, one of Krolak's bridge officers gasped. They were warships all along. Krolak's mind raced, struggling to comprehend what was happening. Everything they knew about human military capability had been wrong. Catastrophically wrong. The supposedly weak, technologically inferior species had just revealed military technology that matched or exceeded Vexari capabilities. "All ships," he barked, recovering his composure. "Battle formation Delta. Concentrate fire on the subtle approach." But the human vessels were already executing their next move. The subtle approach activated a propulsion system that no cargo vessel could possibly contain, accelerating with G-forces that would have pulverized actual cargo. It deftly evaded the belated Vexari response, while the heavy lifters' fighter squadrons began precision strikes against the weapons systems of the Vexari support ships. Sir Vexnar reported, her voice hollow with the realization of their predicament. "The human vessels are targeting our weapons and propulsion systems. They're disabling our ships, not destroying them." "They're toying with us," Krolak snarled. But even as anger clouded his judgment, a cold realization was settling in his gut. This wasn't a battle. It was a demonstration. The humans could have opened with a devastating attack that destroyed half the Vexari fleet in the first salvo. Instead, they were methodically disabling ship after ship, leaving them stranded but intact. It was a show of force and restraint that sent a clear message: we could destroy you, but we're choosing not to. On the main screen, Mulligan's face appeared again. Gone was any trace of the deferential cargo captain. In his place was a military commander in complete control of the battlefield. "Commander Krolak, your fleet is being systematically neutralized. You have 3 minutes to signal your surrender before we are forced to take more drastic measures." As if to emphasize his point, the merchant's promise fired a calculated shot that severed the inevitable conquest's main power conduit to its primary weapons array. For the first time in his military career, Commander Krolak of the Vexari Imperium felt true fear. Not just for himself, but for the future of the Imperium. They had gravely, perhaps fatally, underestimated humanity. And the galaxy was watching. Status report, Krolak demanded as his flagship shuddered under another precision strike. 7 ships completely disabled, Vexari reported. 5 more with critical systems damage. Our remaining vessels are unable to coordinate attacks due to the electronic warfare. The subtle approach executed a maneuver that should have been impossible for its size, neatly positioning itself between 2 Vexari cruisers. Both enemy vessels hesitated, afraid of hitting each other in crossfire. Mulligan capitalized on their hesitation, firing disabling shots that left both ships drifting. Captain Lieutenant Patel called from her station. "I'm intercepting transmissions from other species observation vessels." "Put them through," Mulligan ordered. A cacophony of voices filled the bridge. Humans concealed, such military capability vessels, just transformed from cargo haulers into warships, precision targeting, unlike anything Vexari fleet being systematically dismantled. Mulligan smiled grimly. "Make sure we're transmitting battle footage to the Galactic Council." On the heavy lifter, Commander Chen's fighters executed another coordinated strike, disabling the propulsion systems of 3 more Vexari vessels. "Fleet coordination is breaking down," her tactical officer reported. "The Vexari are beginning to panic." Meanwhile, on various worlds throughout the galaxy, beings of all species were watching the battle unfold via transmissions from diplomatic observers. The revelation of humanity's hidden military capabilities was sending shockwaves through galactic society. On the Galactic Council's observation vessel, representatives watched in stunned silence. All this time, the Zentari ambassador murmured. They were wolves in sheep's clothing. The Draxian representative chittered nervously. "We need to immediately reassess all treaties with Earth." Back in the battle, Krolak made his final desperate move. Divert all power to forward weapons. Target their command ship. The inevitable conquest surged forward, channeling everything into one massive attack. For a moment it seemed the Vexari might salvage some honor from the defeat. Then the subtle approach revealed its final surprise. As the Vexari energy beam lanced toward it, a previously unseen defense system activated. The beam struck what appeared to be a mirror-like shield and reflected back at the inevitable conquest, striking its own weapons array. The bridge of the Vexari flagship went dark, emergency systems barely functioning. "It's over," Commander Vexari said quietly. "We've lost." Krolak stared at the viewscreen showing the transformed human vessels now surrounding his crippled fleet. The cargo ships that weren't cargo ships at all. The supposedly weak species that had just delivered the most humiliating defeat in Vexari military history. "Open a channel," he said, his voice hollow with defeat. "Signal our surrender." As the battle concluded, beings across the galaxy came to the same realization: they had catastrophically misjudged humanity. And no one would ever look at a human cargo ship the same way again. The day the galaxy learned why Earth's warships look like cargo vessels. Part 6: Aftermath and New Galactic Order. 1 week after what galactic news networks were calling the Epsilon revelation, Captain Jack Mulligan stood in full dress uniform aboard the Subtle Approach. The ship was once again disguised as a humble cargo vessel, though the pretense seemed almost comical now. Everyone in the galaxy had seen footage of its transformation. The ship's conference room, the real one, not the cramped storage closet they'd previously shown visitors, had been prepared for diplomatic guests. Representatives from 12 species were due to arrive any minute. "How do I look?" Mulligan asked, adjusting his collar. Commander Reeves gave him a critical once-over. "Like someone who'd rather be wearing anything else, sir." "Is that obvious?" Only to those of us who know you," she assured him. "The diplomats will just see the hero of Epsilon sector." Mulligan grimaced at the title. "I wasn't trying to be a hero. I was following orders." "Try telling that to the Galactic Council," Reeves said with a smirk. "They'd been calling non-stop since the battle." Lieutenant Patel's voice came over the intercom. "Captain, The diplomatic shuttle is docking now. Showtime, Mulligan muttered. The delegation that entered minutes later was a colorful assortment of the galaxy's most influential species. The Zentari ambassador led the group, his tentacle arms performing the elaborate greeting gesture reserved for equals, a far cry from the patronizing acknowledgement humans usually received. Captain Mulligan, the Zentari intoned, "The Galactic Council extends its gratitude for your handling of the Vexari incursion." "Just doing my job," Ambassador Mulligan replied modestly. The Draxian representative chittered forward. "Your job, yes. About that. The Council has many questions regarding humanity's previously undisclosed military capabilities." "I imagine you do," Mulligan said. "Admiral Rodriguez is preparing a full briefing for the Council. In the meantime, I'm authorized to answer what I can." "Let us start with the obvious," said the Morican delegate, whose species had been particularly dismissive of humans in the past. "Those were not cargo ships." Mulligan allowed himself a small smile. "Actually, Ambassador, they were. And they are. The subtle approach regularly transports goods between Earth colonies. We simply multitask." The gathered aliens exchanged uncomfortable glances. For decades, Mulligan continued, humanity has been perceived as technologically inferior, particularly in military applications. We never corrected this misconception. Instead, we adapted. Every ship in Earth's defense fleet serves a dual-purpose commerce and defense. A deception the Vexari representative, not Crow Lack, who had been recalled in disgrace, said bitterly. A necessity, Mulligan countered. "When we first reached the stars, we realized we couldn't compete with established powers in conventional fleet building. So we took a different approach. Why build separate merchant and military fleets when one could serve both purposes? It was efficient, cost-effective, and as an added bonus, our potential adversaries consistently underestimated us." The Zentari ambassador's skin rippled with what humans had learned was thoughtful consideration. "Most ingenious. But now that your secret is revealed, what advantage remains?" "That's the question, isn't it?" Mulligan smiled. "Rest assured, the ships you saw at Epsilon represent only our first-generation technology. Admiral Rodriguez has authorized me to inform the Council that Earth has continued to develop our defensive capabilities beyond what was demonstrated. It wasn't entirely a bluff. Earth did indeed have more advanced ships in development, but the implication that they might be hiding even more capabilities sent a clear message. The Vexari Imperium has agreed to withdraw all territorial claims in the Epsilon sector," the Zentari announced, changing the subject slightly. "They have also proposed a new trade agreement with Earth, offering significantly more favorable terms than previously extended." "How generous of them," Mulligan said dryly. "Several other species have also expressed interest in renegotiating their treaties with Earth," the Zentari continued. "The Council suggests that humanity consider appointing additional diplomatic staff to handle the sudden interest in closer relations." In diplomatic speak, it was as close as the Council would come to admitting they'd been wrong about humanity. The meeting continued for another hour, with the ambassadors probing for information while trying to maintain their dignity. When they finally departed, Mulligan slumped into his chair. "That went better than expected," Reeves observed. "They're scared," Mulligan said. "Not just of what they saw, but of what they might not be seeing. Isn't that the point? The sheep's clothing doctrine worked perfectly. Now nobody knows what we're really capable of." "True," Mulligan nodded. "Admiral Rodriguez's message said applications to Earth's Defense Academy have tripled since the footage went public. Turns out our own people love the idea of wolves in sheep's clothing." Later, as the subtle approach prepared to depart the Epsilon sector, Mulligan stood on his bridge watching a Vexari diplomatic vessel give his ship an extremely wide berth. Captain Lieutenant Patel reported with amusement, "The Vexari are requesting we confirm our current configuration." "Tell them we're in standard cargo configuration," Mulligan replied. "But don't sound too convincing." As the Vexari ship hastily adjusted its course to maintain an even greater distance, Mulligan turned to his crew with a grin. "You know, there's an old Earth saying that seems appropriate. Don't judge a book by its cover. I think the galaxy has finally learned that lesson when it comes to human ships." He settled into his command chair, watching the stars stretch as they prepared for FTL jump. "Though I must say," he added with a wicked smile, I do enjoy how polite everyone has suddenly become in traffic. Throughout the galaxy, vessels from dozens of species now gave human cargo ships the same respectful distance normally reserved for dreadnoughts. Never again would anyone underestimate the unassuming vessels of Earth. After all, you never knew when a humble cargo hauler might suddenly reveal itself to be something far more dangerous. And that was exactly how humanity preferred it.